Okay, good evening, everyone. We'd like to welcome everybody to Westcliff University's Distinguished Innovator Speaker Series. Today, Dr. Barry Sandrew, Director of Entrepreneurship at Westcliff University, will be speaking about lessons learned from colorizing black and white movies and 3D conversion of blockbuster feature films applied to extended reality and spatial web. My name is Rick Mendoza. I'm the Executive Director here at Westcliff University, and I'll be your moderator this evening. We'll get to Dr. Sandrew in just a moment, but first, have a couple of quick announcements. And I'd like to introduce Westcliff University for those in the audience that aren't familiar with our organization. This is our latest campus that we just opened up in August and we're very excited about. Westcliff is an accredited private institution with approximately 3,600 students enrolled both in online and on-campus programs. We have 4 colleges here. College of Business that offers bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees in business administration, as well as certificate programs. The College of Education offers a bachelor's in education, a master's in teaching and English as a second language, and a real intensive English program, as well as certificate programs. Our College of Law offers the JD degree and certificate programs, and our College of Technology offers bachelor's and master's in information technology, computer science, MS degree, and engineering management. For more information on the university, I invite you to visit our website at westcliff.edu, as well as our social media accounts on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Little housekeeping, our audience today is on listen-only mode. However, at the end of the presentation, we will have a Q&A session, and we invite you to participate by using the questions pane at the bottom of your screen. We'll go through as many questions as we can following the presentation. Okay. So now for our feature presentation. From Harvard neuroscience to internationally recognized serial entrepreneur, digital imaging expert, and visual effects pioneer, Dr. Barry Sandrew has over 34 patents in feature film production and visual effects, and decades of feature film and TV accomplishments. It is our pleasure to bring onto our virtual stage, Dr. Barry Sandrew.
Thank you, Rick. Really appreciate it. And welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I want to talk about what I did learn from the colorization of black and white movies back in the late 80s and early 90s, and also from the 3D conversion of feature films of last decade. And really, how the kind of obstacles to adoption that I learned from the consumer for both of those, and how that is applied, and how those insights are applied to virtual and mixed reality. But it's a little bit more than that. What I want to talk about is how immersive imaging technology is evolving and how it's going to influence all of us sooner than you think. I was a neuroscientist at Harvard in the 80s, and I was working with some of the latest and greatest toys that Siemens and General Electric were handing over to us. And they were incredible technologies, but they were all digital. And the thing is that I was using them to create. I was adding color to improve the diagnostic value of them and doing 3D reconstruction and all of that. And all of a sudden, some Wall Street types wanted me to come to Hollywood to actually colorize black and white movies digitally. It had already been done in an analog form, and it was very, very bad. It was terrible. And what happened was I had to actually leave Harvard and actually invent a process for digitizing black and white movies. The reason is because when I went to Hollywood, it was kind of a culture shock. Because what happened was I saw a technology that really hadn't changed since World War II. I mean, they were making films exactly the same way in the 90s as they did back then. And so I had to take a movie, a black and white movie that was 150,000 frames and actually digitize that. And I had to do multiple films and I had to do it efficiently. So what I found out was that that was impossible to do, but I found out a way to do it and invented a process for actually doing multiple movies simultaneously. So, and over the course of, and why would I colorize a black and white movie? That's a good question. I'm glad you asked. Because when movies are made, they get a copyright. 75 years back then, 95 years now. But those copyrights expire. And back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, the studios, a lot of them didn't even register a copyright because there was no aftermarket. There was no videotape, there was no DVDs, Blu-rays, no streaming, none of that. So when a movie was shown in the theater, that was basically it. And they put it on a shelf. So there was a wealth of content that could be colorized. Not only that, but Ted Turner just bought the MGM library, and a number of those movies, of his movies, were going into public domain, and he wanted to renew that copyright. So if he colorized them, he gets a brand new 75-year copyright. And that was really it. It was all a financial thing. And over the course of 10 years, I colorized literally hundreds of movies. Some of these you'll recognize. Again, Hollywood, when I first came there, was all analog film, analog videotape. There was no digital. In fact, digital was looked down upon at that time. But the process of colorization actually improved over time. And some great movies in the last decade were recolorized. It's a Wonderful Life. This was the most popular release of that particular movie ever. And it was even included with the 4K version of the 4K remaster of the black and white, which is very cool. It did a lot of television shows. This was a black and white, whoops. This was a black and white television show from I Love Lucy, but I also did like 98 episodes of Zorro for Disney and Wanted Dead or Alive. Television shows that some people remember, some people don't. But there was a wealth of data, the wealth of product that I could colorize. But while colorization was successful, it wasn't accepted by everyone. There were obstacles to consumer adoption of colorization. To some in the audience, color got in the way. To some, it interfered with the raw emotional impact of the story. Some thought that color was unnecessary for the storytelling of classic films. And to a large extent, they were right. Because these were character-driven, story-driven movies. And color was a nice thing to have, but it wasn't absolutely necessary. And what I learned more from the people who didn't like colorization than from those who did like colorization. What I learned from the people who didn't like colorization was they wanted that ethereal quality to the movie. And what I mean is that these movies were shown at 24 frames a second. Now, 24 frames a second is just above the flicker fusion frequency of our brains and our eyes. And so it shows fluid motion, but it was different. It's not reality. And they didn't want reality. They really wanted to have an emotional escape. They really wanted to be taken into the story, but not immersed in the story, if you understand what I mean. Now let's fast forward to 2007, the emergence of 3D digital cinema. In 2005, two movies came out, Polar Express and Chicken Little. 2006, Monster House and The Nightmare Before Christmas. These movies started to come out when there weren't very many theaters could actually show them. IMAX was one of the few theaters that actually could show any of this stuff. And the interesting thing is that Nightmare Before Christmas was a 2D movie that was converted by Pixar from 2D to 3D. So I knew it could be done. And in 2007, I saw my first DLP digital television, 3D ready television, and it just blew me away. I said, this is amazing. This is going to be the future of cinema. I have to get into it. I'm already converting movies from black and white to color. What's it going to take for me to convert movies from 2D to 3D? Well, as it turns out, about 70% of the process of converting a movie from 2D to 3D was my colorization technology. So there wasn't a huge jump to get there, which was really great because things were moving in 3D. Things were moving fast in 3D. U2 3D came out, Hannah Montana came out. It started to create popular buzz. And then in 2009, we had more, and DreamWorks and Disney started to get involved. The why did they get involved is because everybody in the industry understood that Jim Cameron was going to be coming out with Avatar, and that was going to change everything. They really felt that way. It was so groundbreaking that everybody thought that this was going to be huge. One of the problems, of course, is that there were very few theaters that could show this stuff. I mean, back when Polar Express was out, I think there may be 100 theaters in the entire world that could show it, primarily IMAX movies. But everybody had, the rumor that was going around was that Jim Cameron was going around the world to basically strong arm all of the theater owners to convert their movie theaters from film projectors to digital projectors. And that was no small task. Let me just show you what the world was like back then. Back then, the blue bars are film projectors, and the red bars are digital projectors. And when Avatar came out, I think there were about 20,000 theaters in the whole world that could actually show the movie, but not all of those 20,000 were equipped with 3D. This is the 3D implementation, and it was only about 9,500 of those theaters actually could show 3D. But it changed the whole industry. It changed all of Hollywood, how movies were made, but in particular, how movies were post-produced. The post-production industry was greatly impacted because film was their cash cow, and all of a sudden that disappeared. So this really was a significant change. So in 2000, in December 18th, 2009, Avatar came out, and all of a sudden within Hollywood, an echo chamber was created. Forget everything you ever thought about movie making. 3D is now the future of storytelling. 2009, Avatar came out. 2010, I got my first movie, which was Alice in Wonderland. And I got actually, Sony ImageWorks was awarded the 2D to 3D conversion of Alice in Wonderland, but they couldn't complete the entire thing. So they gave my company a big chunk of it. And that's what we got our feet wet on. Actually, just prior to this, we did Michael Jackson's This Is It tour, but nobody ever saw it. Unfortunately, he passed away. And after Alice in Wonderland, things just took off for my company. The teams that I put together at Legend 3D worked on about 65 of the highest performing feature films that have come out of Hollywood in the past 10 years, both 2D to 3D conversion, as well as visual effects. So it was a very successful time for the company. And you probably recognize most of these, all of the Smurfs movies, a lot of superhero movies. So in 2009, again, all of the major directors were getting into lockstep with 3D. They loved it. And that's primarily because Jim Cameron proclaimed that 3D would be every movie. No matter the genre, it would be 3D. Ridley Scott loved it. Peter Jackson, he bemoaned the fact that Lord of the Rings was not shot in 3D. The Hobbit was very successful in 3D. And then, of course, Martin Scorsese, he did Hugo. I worked with him on Hugo, did some conversion as well as some colorization on Hugo. And that was a masterpiece. It was absolutely beautiful. And while 3D was successful, not everybody was a fan of 3D. The obstacles were many, actually. Some didn't like wearing 3D glasses. Some people got sick of 3D movies. Some people couldn't even see 3D because they had strabismus. One eye was lazy, so they couldn't even see it. And some didn't want to pay the upcharge. For some reason, the studios and the theaters were charging more, even though incrementally, converting a movie from 2D to 3D was not all that much more money. Some people didn't like the intrusion into their personal space. And we took this flat screen, this flat cinema screen, and we completely expanded it. We expanded it into infinity in the back of the screen, and we filled the theater with imagery to the point where we were actually infringing on people's personal space. And that was a problem with some people. Because as in colorization, some people just didn't want to be that immersed in a story. They wanted to be told a story. And the other thing is that Marvel kind of made it into a genre. Superheroes movies became the 3D movie, and people got a little tired of that. Today, movies are still being produced in 3D, particularly by Disney. Disney just finished their last 7 movies were converted to 3D, including Mulan, which nobody is going to see in the US for quite some time. But internationally, these will be shown. Let me move on to 2015 and the next shiny object that I saw. I left Legend 3D around that time. I left 3D because I saw immersive technology actually becoming the next best thing, the next big thing. Virtual reality was very big around this period of time. And virtual reality, of course, is when you put on a headset, the entire world is occluded, you put earphones on, and you're taken out of your world and into a virtual world where the entire visual experience is controlled by the computer in the headset. Augmented reality is, well, a lot of people know about IKEA. IKEA is basically, you can take a chair using web AR right from a web page, and you can get that chair and you can place it in your room so you understand what it's going to look like. But the thing is that it's not really there, obviously. It's an overlay on your phone. So if you put your hand between your phone camera and the chair, it's going to appear as an overlay on your phone. So the virtual object doesn't really exist in space. It's augmented. Mixed reality is a combination of virtual reality and augmented reality. In that case, what you have is you've got virtual objects that ultimately are real. They are experienced real. They have persistence. They have occlusion. They look, for all practical purposes, like real objects. That's what mixed reality is. And really what we're talking about here is we're taking the ultimate analog medium, reality, and we're digitizing it. In 2015 and 2016 at CES, there were headsets all over the place. Virtual reality headsets were everywhere, and everybody was talking about virtual reality. Augmented reality and mixed reality were just a concept. Nobody really felt that it was going to go anywhere because virtual reality was the next big thing. And I know of 2 philosophies of monetizing innovation. One is the field of dreams philosophy. If you build it, they will come. And one is the Steve Jobs philosophy. You've got to start with the consumer experience and work backwards to the technology. And that's the one I try to adhere to, not always successful. But in terms of virtual reality, I think that was truly a field of dreams concept. But nevertheless, in terms of Hollywood, forget everything you ever thought about movie making. Virtual reality is the new future of storytelling. And really, this became the new echo chamber. People were thinking that everything would disappear. Our phones would disappear. Our televisions would disappear. Everything would be virtual reality. Problem is that people did not accept it. The big question was whether it can attract a big enough audience to make it viable. Can it be monetized? And the fact of the matter is that if it can't be monetized, then it becomes an art project or it becomes a hobby. And I don't know of any titles in virtual reality other than game titles that have realized an ROI. So that it hasn't been terribly successful in terms of storytelling. Gaming, absolutely, it's been incredibly successful, particularly location-based VR. It's been very, very successful. But there are many people who, professionals within the industry, the people that were touting 3D were now questioning VR. There's a lot of the people under these major directors that were really pushing for VR. But people like Ed Catmull from Pixar, Jim Cameron, George Lucas, Robert Redford, they all question whether storytelling can be accomplished using VR. Ang Lee, who did Life of Pi, said it best. He was asked, what do you think about virtual reality? And Ang Lee said, I love virtual reality. Virtual reality is great. Only my virtual reality is better than your virtual reality. Let me move the camera. And really, that's the way I feel about virtual reality as well. I would much rather be told a story by Jim Cameron, George Lucas, Scorsese, or Ang Lee than to actually enter a story and have to lead the story or move the story along through my actions. In other words, I want to be told a story, because if you're in virtual reality, you're not going to get a Saving Private Ryan experience on Omaha Beach. That experience, that emotional experience in that scene, you could miss it because you could be looking over to the left and looking at a pigeon that got shot, or you could be looking at the Nazi bunkers in the back, and you could miss this very, very crucial moment in that theater. There are still people who think virtual reality is going to make it in storytelling. I have my doubts. Let's go to something a little bit closer to reality, literally. Augmented reality has been around for a long time. If you've watched a football game, well, all of the first down stuff, that's augmented reality that's overlaid onto the broadcast. The Weather Channel loves it to show how deep flooding is going to be. And it's very effective. But that's augmented reality, that's broadcast. Let me take you through a number of videos to actually show you where augmented reality has started and where it's going. This is a commercial by Pepsi, and what they did was something very, very cool. Now, what they did was they took the windows on either side, they put an LED screen on it, and they essentially made an iPad out of it with cameras facing the street. And they overlaid augmented reality. Very cool stuff. But here's the thing, there was no intelligence in the computer that was overlaying this augmented reality, none whatsoever. This was all just lined up, beautifully lined up by a bunch of engineers. But let's say we can put some intelligence into a smartphone using ArcKit, for instance. ArcKit is a platform for creating augmented reality that Apple came out. Well, let's say we can put some intelligence into the smartphone where it can detect horizontal surfaces, like, for instance, a parking lot. And it can also detect vertical surfaces like a wall. Let me show you what's possible. This was an early experiment by a very talented guy. Beep, beep. Now, this is not visual effects overlaid onto this environment. This is actually augmented reality that's being played out. And this person is looking at it through their mobile phone. This is how they're recording it. Beep, beep. Reminds you of Roger Rabbit. But, this should give you an idea of where things are going. But let me show you a little bit of mixed reality. Now, mixed reality is when you're actually engaging with the virtual object. You're actually manipulating it. You're actually involved with it. Now, this is a case where somebody has a smartphone. They're in a parking lot in Los Angeles, and they pulled up a virtual object, which is a door. The door is not really there, but they can actually place it onto the ground plane of the parking lot, and I'll show you what they did. You can actually look through it as if you're looking through a portal. Again, this person is looking at it through their mobile phone. And you can go on the plank and see what it's like to actually stand on the top of the Eiffel Tower. And you're looking over Paris, and if you go 180 degrees, you can actually see the parking lot that you left. Totally immersive, even though you're looking at it through your mobile phone. Now, let's go a little bit further now. We looked at the smartphone being able to recognize horizontal surfaces and vertical surfaces. Now, what if it understands the entire 3D environment that you're in? All of a sudden, certain qualities to these virtual objects make them real. 6D is one company that has gone a long way with that.
The promise of augmented reality is to bring virtual objects fully into the real world. Unfortunately, it's been a little lacking. Our devices mostly see the world as flat 2D video, limiting virtual objects to just a layer on top, like a sticker on a photo. That's all about to change. 6D has created a platform to capture the depth of the physical world, using just a smartphone camera. And this is a huge breakthrough. Before 6D, the 3D model of the world had to be captured through specialized and expensive equipment. Now these images can be captured in real time using the phones we carry every day. With our phones finally able to see the world as it really is, in all 3 dimensions, the opportunities for virtual objects to interact with our environment and us get really interesting. For example, with a live, accurate 3D model, you can create occlusion. An object can disappear around a corner or hide behind something.
Can you run and hide?
Behaving as if it's actually part of the real world. If you know AR, that's a big deal. And for AR to be truly useful, especially for businesses, it needs to be persistent. Virtual objects should appear precisely where you placed them, looking exactly the way you intended for each customer. Now, with all that new 3D data, your phone suddenly becomes hundreds of times more precise than GPS. To top it off, as you use any app built on the 6D platform, your phone benefits from the map contributions of others, everyone's phone stitching together a virtual map in the cloud for everyone's benefit. With the apps we love finally able to understand their place in our 3D world, virtual objects will behave like real objects, bringing a shared new reality to life. Welcome to your world with 6D.
You know, I just got my iPhone 12 and it has LiDAR in it, which is sort of like echolocation for bats, but it's using light, it's using laser light, just like they did with 6D to actually create a 3D model of, or get 3D information about the environment. I did this 3D model of my guest bathroom in about 3 minutes using my phone. Now, it's not very clean, but I can get it much cleaner down to about 4 millimeters in resolution, and it will have all of the information I need to create virtual objects that have persistence and occlusion. Here's an example of how powerful this can actually get. Now, here's 4 people who are in a room, in a studio that's 5,000 square feet. And what they're doing is they're each going around with their iPhone 12 and basically it looks like they're painting it, but what that's doing is it's capturing all of that 3D data, and it's going into one central computer, and it's being combined, it's being crowdsourced. And at the end of this, let me show you, they end up with this. Again, it's like my guest bathroom, except you've got an entire floor that's now has now all of the 3D data to do some amazing stuff. You could have a 3D model of a car or something like that, and you could actually have it placed in the middle of the room, and it will be there for everybody to see when they go enter it, because it's always going to be there, like this. There's a virtual object that's there, it was placed there, and it's going to be there. It's going to be there until somebody takes it away, and it can be occluded by a wall. So it actually has presence. It actually, the virtual object, even though it's not really there, behaves as if it's real. Snapchat has taken this to a whole nother level.
And so let's take a look at our magical forest transformation lens that we built for the Apple keynote. LiDAR, it really enables us to understand the geometry and meaning of the surfaces around us. So this allows us to plant grass on the floors. It allows us to put flowers onto the tables. And where we see a wall, we can now grow vines hanging down it. And we can transform the ceiling into this never-ending starry sky. Let me now give you a peek at what's happening under the hood. The LiDAR sensor allows us to understand the structure of the world. And it also understands.
But that's basically what they were doing before with the iPhone 12. They were basically creating this data set of the whole 3D environment. So you can imagine, you could actually have the avatar surroundings in your room, in your living room. Once your phone understands the 3D geometry of your room, you could have all of biofluorescence and all of that of a scene from Avatar. Now, there are companies that want to do this for whole cities. They want to actually crowdsource whole cities so they have better wayfinding than GPS, because this technology, LiDAR, is significantly better than GPS. GPS is accurate to about a meter or two. This is accurate down to a millimeter. And there's other LiDAR that can be down to a sub-millimeter. So what they're talking about here is creating more accurate wayfinding, but also they're talking about having art exhibits, they're having theater in the park. They're using their imagination, and obviously it's out there, but it's not that far out there. Let me show you an example of what can be done. This is an environment. This is an environment where the entire 3D environment is known, and you can have humpback whales flying in the sky. And you're looking at it from your perspective, and somebody else may be looking at it from their perspective. And all of these other objects, these art objects, are placed in a certain area, and they are not going to move. They're going to be persistent. And they occlude each other depending on where they are in that 3D environment. Now, there's a problem with that. The problem is, and I saw this in an article quite some time ago, a number of articles about graffiti, virtual graffiti. You could have virtual graffiti everywhere. You could create a beautiful virtual sculpture of something and put it in a park, and somebody could paint all over it and put graffiti on it. And that actually happened to one artist. You could have obscene notices put over your house. You could go into a restaurant and somebody could put a sign, a virtual sign that says, "This is a lousy place to eat." So this could actually lead to chaos. And eventually, I believe it will lead to chaos. And there are some solutions. And Versus is one of those companies that has a solution.
There's a new world emerging right before our very eyes. A world where we seamlessly and naturally interact with augmented and virtual reality, opening endless possibilities to learn, collaborate, create, and explore. where spaces and cities become smart, physical and digital goods are tracked, and people's identity, security, and finances are protected, enabling citizens, big data, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things to finally work together for the benefit of humanity and the planet. But have you ever stopped and wondered, how do we actually get from here to there? The last few years have shown enormous advances in augmented and virtual reality devices. Computer vision, location tracking, edge computing, blockchain, and 5G. But these applications and the devices and operating systems they utilize are not connected. They're siloed experiences. There's no common standard for how all these technologies and applications can work together. For that, you need a common protocol, a way to communicate between each of these technologies. And for that, you need Verses. Verses has developed the HSTP, or Hyperspace Transfer Protocol, allowing parties to agree on who, what, and where everything is in physical and virtual worlds. This enables anyone with the right permissions to discover what something is, who owns it, where it's located, and what can be done with it. It is a paradigm shift in the future of computing. Verses is currently developing multiple specifications and pilot projects with commercial and enterprise partners, as well as standards groups and governments. Early tests have already demonstrated incredible time and money savings while providing previously inaccessible spatial analytics and spatial performance data. Join us and our many forward-thinking partners and industry leaders as we drive the next generation of innovation and lay down the digital infrastructure to support a better future and a new web for people, businesses, our environment, and humanity. Let's build the spatial web.
I spoke to the CEO of Verses, and they just won a contract with the European Union to use this technology to create a super highway for drones. So this is starting to happen. And these are some of the companies that are looking at doing exactly the same thing. Apple, Google, Niantic is from Pokemon Go, Snapchat, Augmented Reality. They all want to digitize the world and control that data so that they can do some amazing things with it, including augmented and mixed reality. You may have heard of Magic Leap. Magic Leap was a company that came out with these goggles. I believe that this was a Field of Dreams type of a product, and it wasn't terribly successful, even though Rony Abovitz raised about $3 billion to do it. But he is a visionary, a genius in terms of all of the underlying technology that he created. And he was able to actually do some beautiful stuff in terms of storytelling. And he just announced today that he's starting a new company that's going to get into storytelling. But he also talked about the magic verse. And the magic verse is basically what Verses was talking about. The web 3D, the mirror world. You have the internet, you have the World Wide Web, and on top of that, you have the Web 3.0, which basically indexes people, places, and things. And above that, you have applications such as mobility, energy and water, health and wellness, communications, and entertainment. In terms of a city, you talk about a smart city. Well, this is a true smart city in terms of energy and water. All of the underlying infrastructure of water and electricity would be known, and you'd be able to access it by augmented and mixed reality to repair it or whatever. IoT devices would all be synchronized. It would all be a symbiotic type of relationship. And all of this will happen in Web 3.0, which is definitely coming. This is a story that Rony Abovitz at Magic Leap created, and it's absolutely beautiful. I'm not going to show the entire thing, but it's about this girl whose grandmother died, and she travels to the cottage, and all the memories from the grandmother come to play. This is a trailer. If you want to actually see what it looks like, this is what it would look like using the Magic Leap glasses.
Okay, let's do this.
So this is in your living room. It's basically like a hologram in your living room. It's not quite, you know, it's ethereal for sure. It doesn't look real, nor is it intended to look real, but it tells a good story. And it's a unique way to show a story using mixed reality.
Kitty?
One of the issues that I've been dealing with and that I've been opposing on my LinkedIn is that people seem to be looking at eyewear as being the rate limiting step before any of this happens, which means that, you know, they think that none of this is going to happen. Mixed reality is not going to be popular until Apple comes out with their own glasses. So basically you're going to have your mobile phone, and all of the information on your mobile phone is going to be wearable. You're going to wear it. That's going to be quite some time away. And you really don't need to have glasses because the iPhone is very, very powerful. 49% of millennials haven't gone 5 hours without checking it. 79% sleep with their mobile phones and wake up and check it once per night. And the smartphone has literally become an extension of ourselves. It has all our playlists, our photos, our friends, our whole social environment is in it. And we're used to looking at the screen, but when you talk about mixed reality, you're looking through the screen. There is no real obstacle to this. And as proof that there's no real obstacle, you just look at Pokemon Go. Almost 600 million downloads as of last summer. And 150,000 traffic accidents. 256 people died trying to catch Pikachu through their phone by looking through their phone using their camera and picking off these little characters in augmented reality that don't even have any intelligence, like I showed you before. There is no persistence, really. There is no occlusion or anything like that. But it caught on. In early 2019 and grossed more than $4 billion in revenue. Really amazing. So there are a few obstacles to the adoption of mixed reality. If people start looking at the smartphone that is getting smarter and smarter all the time. If I hadn't gotten my iPhone 12 with LiDAR, I would say, well, this is out there a little bit. But the fact that I have the ability to collect this data and to actually collect it in a crowdsourcing manner, I think that augmented and virtual reality, augmented and mixed reality are going to be very, very noticeable in our lives within the next 3 years and probably ubiquitous within the next 5 years. Now, there's something I'd like everybody in this webinar to do. I hope you'll do it. There's an app that I'd like you to download. This woman is using that app. And what she's doing is she's looking around. See this, there's a portal there. And she's walking in that portal. And she's going to be looking around. She's looking at the pictures. She's looking casually around the entire place. And a story is going to unfold. This is the app. It's called Enter the Room. Perfectly safe to download on your smartphone. It was created by the International Red Cross. And it's probably one of the most elegant, minimalist stories in mixed reality I have ever seen. And it's very, very powerful and very emotional. And it's the kind of thing, you know, in virtual reality, you'd be all alone. You'd be totally isolated experiencing this. But you can do this with other people. The nice thing about mixed reality is it's social and it's collaborative. So you can take your partner, your friend, and actually go into this room together. And what's going to happen, let me just show you how it's going to happen without showing you the actual story. It's going to ask you to access your camera. Then it's going to ask you to move your camera around till you see this thing there. And then you click OK, and there's your portal. And then you can walk into that and experience it. I hope everybody does that. And I hope everybody emails me and tells me what they think of it, because if you aren't emotionally impacted by this particular story, it only takes about 4 minutes, then I've got some therapists that you might want to look up. That's it. So thank you very much. Before we take off, I want to tell you some of the speakers that are coming up. We've got some very exciting speakers. One is Dr. Shahini Ghose. She is a quantum physicist, and she's a TED fellow. Her TED presentation generated 4.5 million views, and she's going to talk about quantum physics and make it understandable. I saw her on Nova, and she was talking about Alice in Wonderland in Quantum Land. And she's going to bring up questions like, can something exist in 2 places at one time? Actually, they can. Can something here on Earth, information here on Earth, all of a sudden influence something light years away? Yes, it can. And she's going to explain how. Not only can it do it, but it's already been proven experimentally. Can't wait to hear from her. The next guest we have in March is somebody who has influenced everybody on this webinar. He has changed humanity. It's Marty Cooper, the inventor of the mobile phone, the cell phone. He just came out with a book called Cutting the Cord. I'll be interviewing him. I've known him for about 12 years, and that's going to be very, very exciting. And then we have, after that, a neuroscientist, Leanne Tchaikovsky, who has a technology for helping kids with ADHD and autism. And it's very, very effective using games and using eye tracking. She'll be here March 25th. So we've got some wonderful speakers coming up, and I hope you all are able to join us.
Dr. Sandrew, that was fascinating. This weekend, for the first time, I actually tried VR with my kids, and I'm blown away by the technology. It's exciting stuff. We do have a couple questions from the audience, so let me pull some up for you. All right. This comes from David Johnson. What are some of the ethical implications? For example, law enforcement or a malevolent organization putting someone in an environment as proof, even though that person is not there. Basically, manufacturing evidence, like so much technology legislation, may trial in how this may be used.
Well, it's a good question, Dr. Johnson. As a matter of fact, it gets worse than that. There's something called deep fake, where you can actually take somebody like Obama, and you can, using his voice and using his image, you can have him say anything you want. So there's a lot of issues, a lot of ethical issues that we're going to be dealing with in mixed reality, because there are going to be ethical issues. And the beauty of Versus, the beauty of Web 3.0 is that, well, at least a lot of them are talking about using blockchain to create these virtual objects. So the virtual object will be real because you know through blockchain that it is genuine. And not only that, but you also know that that virtual object or person has permission to be at a certain place. It may actually have space that it owns. So I think that in order to minimize the ethical issues, I think you have to have a Web 3.0 that is blockchain enabled in order to keep everybody honest.
Okay, we have another question from Jeff. All of what you're showing so far needs an external tool of some sort, i.e. glasses, phone, headset, etc., to experience VR, MR elements. To what degree is that an impediment versus having it literally internalized in some way before it becomes truly accepted?
Well, let's face it. Television is not going to go away. Television is going to be here, but light field technology is going to possibly make television more holographic. So you're not going to be looking at a screen. I think the flat screen is still going to be around, but people may like the holographic light field technology just as well. In terms of movie screens are going to improve because we're going to have laser projection, and that's going to dramatically increase the quality of what we're going to be seeing in theaters. Theaters are not going to go away. I think that optics, that is AR optics and XR optics, like what's going on with North and Apple, it's going to happen, but it's not going to be as fast as we think. You're going to basically have an iPhone on your face initially, I would think. But these things, these smartphones are not going to disappear. People are still going to want to use them, and people, a lot of millennials are going to tell you, you're going to have to take it from my cold hands in order to, because they're not going to give it up. Like I said, it has become an extension of ourselves. I don't know of any other device that is so personalized as the smartphone. And that's why it is so natural to use it for Pokemon Go or for augmented reality and mixed reality.
Our very own Dr. Sayed has a question. He has two, actually. So did you use interpolation as a process? I hope I pronounced that right. Interpolation? Did I pronounce that right?
In terms of?
That's what he said. So did you use interpolation as a process? And the second question maybe has something to do with it. Did you convert black and white into grayscale and then moved it to colorization?
Well, let me answer the second one because I don't have an answer for the first.
Okay.
I don't know what you're talking about. But no, basically, it was a relatively easy, simple technology. I basically used pseudo color, but creatively. If you know what pseudo color is, it's what weathermen use to show the intensity of storms. Red might be intense and something, and basically it's based on the luminance of the cloud layers and all of that. Well, the same thing happened with colorization. The only thing is I was able to mask out certain areas. I could mask out 20, 30, 40 areas on a single frame. And within each one of those frames, with each one of those masks, I would have a spectrum of color that would change based on the changing luminance. So there was a certain amount of AI in it, even way back then. So that's how it was done. It was based on luminance, yeah.
You have a really good question from Anna LaGuardia. Do you have any information about how some of these things you have mentioned are being used in an education to enhance students' learning? In your opinion, advantages or disadvantages?
That's a great question because I've been searching high and low for some AR and VR, AR and MR for education, and there isn't a huge amount out there. In terms of math and science, yeah, you can dissect a frog, you can see the solar system, but in terms of, and also in humanities, you can actually use those portals to go to certain places and for historical places and that sort of thing. So yeah, there is that, but it's not going to supplement. I mean, it's going to supplement learning, but it's not going to replace learning. There are some things that we just have to get away from the gimmickry of AR and MR in the classroom and make sure that what we're actually giving to the students has value, because it can also be a distraction.
All right, we have time for one last question here. This seems to have so much great potential. However, if one company designs all the protocols, what happens, for example, when using for commerce? If the political stances in contrast with reverse, can they be excluded? What are the unintended consequences of one company control?
It's a great question, especially today when we see what's happening with Facebook and Twitter. I don't have an answer for that, but I do know that it needs, well, I mean, look, the internet was initially intended to be totally decentralized and independent and free for everybody to do whatever they wanted with it. That was the original intent. It's not like that. It's actually broken. It's failed. We have to do better with Web 3.0 and make sure that it is not overly influenced by the big money people.
Well, that about does it for us. Dr. Barry Sandrew, thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom and your experience with us. We appreciate it. I'm going to ask our webinar audience, if you would do us a favor. At the end of this, we're going to put a survey for you to fill out. That does a lot for us in order for us to be able to bring you some relevant content that you guys are looking for, and make sure that we're doing a good job sharing the information. So if you would take a minute to fill that out, we'd really appreciate it. And if you miss it, you'll get an email reminding you to give us give the survey a look. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Barry Sandrew, and thank you everybody for your time today. Have a great Thursday evening. Take care.
Thank you.